I have my copy of Northanger Abbey, and I have my copy of The Mysteries of Udolpho at the ready. The two are inextricably linked, but I have to tell you that The Mysteries of Udolpho, this copy, is like a brick. The thing is huge. The only book that I have that's bigger than my copy of The Mysteries of Udolpho would have to be my beloved copy of Varney the Vampire. Look at this thing. That is Varney the Vampire, and it is massive. It is like 2 bricks. Now, are we going to work on Varney the Vampire? No. But what I wanted to point out was that this book by Ann Radcliffe is huge. It is a gem, and it is also a book that participates in the Rise of the Novel studies. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and you're studying the novel, Rise of the Novel is sort of a genre unto itself, in that that's what I specialized. That's what I did all my theses and all my essays on in grad school and undergraduate work. I was an English major, and the seminal work that you're going to want to study if you're studying novels is Ian Watt's The Rise of the Novel. And this particular one points out Defoe, Richardson, and Fielding's. That's the triumvirate. But Austen is mentioned in here for her realism, and my particular take on that is that she forms the basis of the novel as we know it today in 3 acts, and The Mysteries of Udolpho is a crazy little, or crazy large book that when you read a chapter, there's a lot going on just in one chapter alone. So it's the structure that Austen created with her method of storytelling that differs from this, which is kind of a rambling storytelling. Even though it does have a beginning, middle, and end, it diverts and it goes all over the place. Let's see what the video has to say. If you want to know more specifically how it is that a guy like me came to be reading Jane Austen, and the point, of course, of this particular video is to talk about Northanger Abbey in the future, because this is the 250th year of Jane Austen being in the world. Her literature has touched the lives of everyone on the planet, including a guy like me. And so the goal is to learn about Northanger Abbey through The Mysteries of Udolpho. We won't get too involved with it, but we will give it a cursory glance, and then we'll dive into Northanger Abbey. So without further ado, here's the video.
The Mysteries of Udolpho was written by Ann Radcliffe and was published in 1794. With its creepy castle, its menacing villains, and its mysterious secrets, it has been thrilling readers for more than 200 years. It should come as no surprise that this highly popular thriller holds an important place in the history of Gothic literature, the rise of Romanticism, and even the development of the modern detective novel. It is so enormously popular because it has a little something for everyone. Although Radcliffe subtitled the novel a romance, this Gothic thriller is also in part a travelogue, a sentimental novel, a novel of manners, a Bildungsroman, and a mystery that is replete with a locked room puzzle. And it even contains a selection of poems. Most prominently, however, the Mysteries of Udolpho showcases Ann Radcliffe's ability to engage the reader's imagination and to create page-turning suspense. Readers are certain to enjoy wondering whether the heroine, Emily Saint-Aubert, will ever escape the clutches of her step-uncle Montagny to reunite with her darling Valancourt. They will also ponder the eerie music, the odd resemblances of family, the unexpected corpses, and the sinister disappearances that haunt Emily, along with the mysteries that she hopes to solve. The author of the Mysteries of Udolpho led a much more sedate life than the heroine that she created. When the novel was published, Anne Ward Radcliffe was just shy of her 30th birthday. She had begun writing shortly after her marriage to William Radcliffe to pass the time on those evenings when her husband was working late. Radcliffe's hobby soon became a profitable venture. She had already been published with success and was paid the incredible sum of £500 for the Mysteries of Udolpho. After the Italian appeared in 1797, Radcliffe mysteriously stopped publishing, which led to erroneous reports that she had died or had gone insane. In truth, she died peacefully in her bed of complications from spasmodic asthma at the age of 58. Anne Radcliffe's work influenced an impressively broad spectrum of contemporary and future writers. These were to include Matthew Gregory Lewis, Charles Robert Maturin, Charles Brockden Brown, Honoré de Balzac, Victor Hugo, Charles Baudelaire, Edgar Allan Poe, and even the Marquis de Sceaux. Radcliffe also may have influenced the Romantics, William Wordsworth, John Keats, and Lord Byron, and we could potentially add Percy and Mary Shelley, Charles Dickens, and William Makepeace Thackeray to the list. The most famous instance of Radcliffe's influence occurs when the novelist Jane Austen invokes the Mysteries of Udolpho in her own novel, Northanger Abbey, published in 1818. The boorish John Thorpe, for example, dislikes Udolpho without even having read it, while by contrast, Henry Tilney recalls finishing it within 2 days, his hair standing on end the entire time. Likewise, the Abbey's protagonist, Catherine Morland, states emphatically that she is so very delighted with the book and that she should like to spend her whole life in reading it. She succeeds nearly too well, however, in spending her whole life in reading it. Miss Morland spends much of the novel unravelling the troubled web that she has spun by reading her life circumstances through the lens of Udolpho. And yet, while this voluminous novel may threaten Catherine's peace, it is as well her shield. "While I have Udolpho," she declares, "I feel as if nobody could make me miserable." Anne Radcliffe's influence also extends to modern popular fiction. She's been viewed as both the progenitor of the modern detective and the locked-room mystery. Emily Saint-Aubert could be seen as, indeed, a kind of prototypical detective. She spots mysteries, gathers information, and explores the leads. All is ultimately revealed. Emily is prevented, however, from fully solving the mysteries on her own. Modern readers may be unnerved by the amount of description there is in The Mysteries of Udolpho. The first edition contained no illustrations, and it would be hard to think of illustrations that could adorn the pages of Radcliffe's novel. It should be known that Radcliffe had never seen the landscapes that she describes, to be attributed instead to the travel writing often seen during her day. Oddly enough, thanks to the money that she came to make, she did eventually get to see these landscapes firsthand. Radcliffe additionally utilised the paintings of Rosa, Gaspar, and Lorraine to fill in the gaps of her imagination. The frequent repetition of these landscape descriptions may actually serve a hidden purpose. They've been created to provide contrast to the awe-inspiring horrors that unfold. This literary device, whether intentional or not, was apparently lost on Radcliffe's critics. While her novel had received praise that was largely positive, reviewers were ambivalent about her landscapes. They were found to be lovely and yet a touch repetitive. The British critic took note of her lively and interesting descriptions of scenes and places, but suggested that her talent for description led her to excess.
We have somewhat too much of evening and of morning, of woods and hills and vales and streams. We are sometimes so fatigued at the conclusion of one representation of this kind, that the languor is not altogether removed at the commencement of that which follows.
The critical review believed that in the descriptions there was too much sameness. The pine and the larch tree wave, and the full moon pours its lustre through almost every chapter. And it was the monthly review that complained of Radcliffe's tedious prolixity in her local descriptions. Reviewers reacted as well to the novel's poems, sprinkled throughout the narrative, often presented as Emily's creations. The poetry was generally praised, with certain poems being reprinted in contemporary articles. But it was felt that they tended to interrupt the flow of the novel's progress. It was even suggested that the poems be published separately, so that a better sense of appreciation could occur. A phenomenon which may alert modern readers concerns the frequency with which our heroine sustains her fainting spells. It's been calculated that one is certain to occur at least once every 48 pages. This may correlate with Emily's tendency nearly to solve something, only to faint as soon as she encounters a forbidden scrap of writing or some terrible thing behind a tapestry. Apart from keeping Emily from learning the truth, all this fainting tends to raise the suspense level for readers, showing that Radcliffe understands the assignment. Another motif that tends to stand out is the presence of books and reading. Emily Saint-Aubert always manages to pack up her books when she's departing for a journey, even at a moment's notice. Emily hauls her books over the Pyrenees, the Alps, and the Apennines, yet she seldom has time to read them. These books are instead something of a foil for the drama she experiences. Emily will often pick up a book only to throw it down as she contends with some new distress. And she's not the only reader. Her darling Valancourt woos her by comparing notes on various authors and swapping one of his books for one of hers. The Count de Villefort reads Tacitus, and even the servants are apparently readers, as we see. Ludovico reads a ghost story that's been lent to him by Dorothy the housekeeper. In sum, they all tend to read in advance of some distressing occurrence, reinforcing a view of books as bulwarks against the spectre of misfortune. In spite of Radcliffe's immense influence and popularity, her works eventually fell out of fashion. It was Thackeray who lamented the neglect, asking, "Who is there to ask at Moody's or the London Library? Who inquires about the mysteries of Udolpho?" Another anonymous fan once said, "Does anyone now read Mrs. Radcliffe, or am I the only wanderer in her windy corridors?" It wasn't until the 20th century that critical interest in Radcliffe took shape, and from this point, the rest is history, her place secured in the literary canon. Many have felt the same way that Catherine Morland feels about the Mysteries of Udolpho, that while reading, the rest of the world seems to slip away. Maybe it's because of this escapism that readers are drawn into this compelling narrative, which boasts a near 300,000 word count. At the novel's end, Radcliffe expresses the hope that reading it will ease the pain of mourners. And Sir Walter Scott likewise compares its reading to the use of opiates, noting its most blessed power to aid the sick and the solitary. Well-founded are these assessments, as the Mysteries of Udolpho serve more than just those of the grieving, the ill, and the lonely, but the rest of us as well, who need a panacea from the rigours of everyday life.
The story on how I started reading Jane Austen begins actually a long way back when I was a lot younger, and I was reading Lord of the Rings and Piers Anthony and things like that, fantasy novels. So it's kind of interesting that Miss Moreland reads fantasy too, right? Well, I wouldn't have known who Jane Austen was back then just because I wouldn't have been involved with a literary family. None of my parents went to college, and I was into Lord of the Rings and AC/DC and rock and roll. The notion of me reading Jane Austen would have been non-existent, and I was a musician for the longest time. After high school, I was in an accident, and so I started drifting back towards books because I couldn't play on stage really as well as I used to, and so I just started focusing on books. But I had always been oriented towards the ghost stories and the paranormal and the H.P. Lovecraft. So I would be in the bookstore looking through the fiction section and reading things like H.P. Lovecraft and looking for other stories. I remember I got this book a long time ago. This is the Penguin Book of Witchcraft, and it's just basically a bunch of short stories. But the thing about it is they're all very serious. And that's kind of how I was. I would delve into this realm of serious ghost story, and I was really believing it back then that, you know, ghosts exist and all this crazy stuff. And I started reading novels like Mary Shelley and Dracula, and I was just like, these aren't ghost stories. These are like long novel stories that sound like they're real. They're really well written, and they just draw you in on how serious it is. Frankenstein's this tormented creature, and Dracula has his brides in the castle, and he kills people, and they, you know, need to kill him, and there's nothing playful about it, really, at all. So as time progressed, there came a point to where I was getting a little more critical and a little more serious about my English studies, and I would read a lot of introductions to these ghost stories and things like that. And here I've got the Book of the Supernatural. I would read the introductions to these things, and sure enough, what would pop up in the introductions than the Mysteries of Udolpho, which I have right here. And it's like, the Mysteries of Udolpho. It's about a castle and an evil villain and a girl who's caught, and there's all these ghosts and all this crazy stuff happening. That's, it's really serious ghost storytelling, and you need to get a hold of it, and you need to read it. Whenever I read these introductions, something would be mentioned about, the Northanger Abbey. That's another one too that deals with paranormal and ghosts and all. I would just see the word Northanger Abbey, and I don't even think I registered Jane Austen back then, when I saw that. So I didn't read the Mysteries of Udolpho first. I read like the Picture of Dorian Gray and other books like that. And then I was like, you know what, I need to read. I keep hearing about Northanger Abbey and Mysteries of Udolpho, and I found a copy of Northanger Abbey at Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, I'm gonna get into this because it's about this girl and Northanger Abbey. That's a castle, and it's got to be a serious. After reading Frankenstein and Dracula, I mean, this book has got to be something pretty serious. It's not a short story. It's a pretty involved little deal about ghosts and the paranormal and stuff like that. So when I went to go read this, I was working at a hardware store, and I would, they make you take hour lunches, and so I'm like, I eat, and then I got all this time, I'm sitting in the car under a tree, and I just bought this book, and I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting to go back to work, and I'm reading this. Lo and behold, I'm a chapter into it, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then I get into the second chapter, and I'm learning about Catherine Morland, and I'm learning about the pump room, and I keep looking at the author, and I'm like, Jane Austen? Who's Jane Austen? What's going on here? This isn't Bram Stoker. So at any rate, I finished the novel, and I'm like, what? That was not funny. This is some kind of a joke. That was very cute. I got the whole thing. She was into reading the Mysteries of Udolpho, and she got her mind all wrapped up in the story, and it led her to behave. She behaved through the lens of the Udolpho's story, and she was corrected, she got her head straight, and she figured it out, and she got married and whatever, and so that was my introduction to Jane. And then, so now that I know Jane Austen, I've read her novels, and I mean, that was a while back when I read Northanger Abbey. So since then, my thing for Jane Austen has been more like most authors who are, venture into beyond Dickens and beyond Stoker, anything 100 years or more in the past. If I'm reading them, then for one, these are authors that haven't been trained through creative writing classes. They write because they're naturally English educated, and English is their language, and it's who they are. And so they know their own language very well, and they have their own mannerisms. The whole thing about character study and the novel is what I started being interested in, and I started viewing my relationship with these authors. When I read them, they come to life. So I figure, you know, I still have my love of paranormal being enacted when I read a book that's old and the author has passed on from this world eons the world, and the older, like, the better, because you're reaching back in time. So at any rate, my introduction to Austen, however, was based on being kind of like Miss Moreland, a little silly. I would say that I was duped by Jane Austen. But it's just kind of funny that she's known for wit, and I swear, when I read her books, every once in a while I will run into passages that just, I will be on the floor rolling with how funny that she intended it to be without, you know, she's like, I'm making a joke while I'm writing this. I wonder if anyone's going to notice that I'm poking fun at this person, you know, and then you've got people like Mr. Collins. So there you have it. So here I was, I thought I was getting another Frankenstein, and I got Catherine Morland. So that's how I came to know Jane Austen, and my favorite character probably out of the canonical 6 would have to be Fanny from Mansfield Park. I know that's not the greatest choice. I did do a video on Emma that's not too popular, so if anyone can give me the heads up on why no one likes Emma, I thought I did her some pretty good justice. Emma's pretty funny. At any rate, my introduction to Jane Austen was through the self-duping of a chase after a paranormal story. So there you have it. If this video has been helpful or enjoyable in any way, please consider clicking the like button and or subscribing. And thank you for watching.